Sometimes the ones we love the most are the hardest to find, Ethan whispered, his breath fogging in the sharp morning air as he stood at the edge of the snow-dusted cliff, staring down at the winding trail below. The wind carried a faint metallic tang, the scent of frozen pine and earth mixing with the crisp bite of winter, each gust reminding him of the years he had spent searching. Ranger, his German shepherd, padded silently at his side, muscles coiled under a thick coat of silver and cream, ears perked high, amber eyes tracking every movement in the shadows of the towering firs. Ethan adjusted the straps of his pack, the leather worn and soft from countless miles, feeling the ache in his shoulders that had nothing to do with age but with the relentless persistence of hope. The forest stretched endlessly, a labyrinth of white and gray, branches bending under the weight of snow like tired old arms, and somewhere beyond the slope, Ranger's nose twitched, whiskers brushing against frost as he sniffed a hidden path, a signal Ethan had come to recognize after so many long nights of empty roads and quiet desperation. With careful steps, Ethan followed, boots crunching over ice-laden roots, his gaze scanning the faint trail of paw prints that seemed impossibly familiar yet maddeningly elusive. Memories drifted unbidden, the first night they had met, Ranger's head resting lightly on his knee as the campfire crackled, the night they had lost one another after the storm, each hour stretching into an eternity of cold and silence. A sudden movement caught Ranger's attention, a subtle shift in the wind, and he barked 3 short, deliberate notes, the pattern etched into Ethan's memory as a sign that the trail was real, that the years of searching were beginning to pay off. The veteran knelt briefly, placing a hand on Ranger's neck, feeling the steady heartbeat beneath thick fur, a rhythm of loyalty and trust that had never wavered, before rising and continuing along the narrow path that hugged the cliffside. Light filtered through the branches, pale and glassy, illuminating a moss-covered rock that jutted like a marker, and Ethan felt the old surge of hope, sharp and aching, that they were close, that somehow, fate had guided Ranger's instincts to something beyond the ordinary. Every step was measured, silent but full of anticipation, the forest itself seeming to hold its breath, the distant murmur of a frozen stream echoing like a whisper of a promise long deferred. Ethan's gloved hand brushed against the bark of a massive pine, rough and cold, grounding him in the present, yet his mind raced through the years, the loneliness, the nights spent under indifferent stars, and the unyielding faith that had kept him moving. Ranger paused, ears flicking, and then turned to Ethan, amber eyes wide, a question in their depth, as if to say, "Are you ready for what waits ahead?" Ethan nodded, a lump forming in his throat, and together they pressed forward, each step a beat in the long symphony of reunion, the snow crunching beneath them, the wind whispering secrets of perseverance, love, and the quiet miracles that sometimes waited silently for those who never gave up. The trail wound deeper into the forest, narrow and uneven, lined with frost-laden branches that shimmered in the pale morning light, each step revealing subtle hints of life stirring beneath the snow. Ethan moved cautiously, his eyes scanning the shadowed contours of the landscape, the way the sun fractured through the tall pines painting patterns on the white blanket below, while Ranger's paws pressed into the snow with precision, ears swiveling toward every distant sound. The scent of damp earth and resin mingled with the faint metallic edge of ice, and Ethan breathed it in, steadying his mind against the memory of empty streets and nights spent alone, the years that had stretched without the warmth of companionship. Ranger paused at a cluster of fallen branches, nose close to the ground, tail low and deliberate, a signal Ethan had come to trust without question. The path led them to a hidden glade, sunlight catching on a frozen creek, water trapped in crystal sheets that reflected shards of the sky above like fractured mirrors. A faint movement caught Ethan's attention, the shadow of a figure among the trees, slender and small, seemingly waiting. Ranger growled softly, not in alarm, but as if urging caution and focus, and Ethan stepped forward, careful, his boots crunching over the ice-covered soil. Every instinct honed through years of training whispered to him, not for conflict but for awareness, the subtle balance of patience and precision. The figure emerged slowly, revealing a young boy, perhaps 8 or 9, bundled in a threadbare coat, cheeks flushed from the cold, shivering with both fear and awe. Ranger's ears twitched, and the dog moved closer to Ethan, body low, eyes bright amber, as if assessing the scene, ensuring the safety of all involved. Ethan knelt slightly, keeping his movements deliberate, showing no sudden intent, his hand extended in peace. The boy's wide eyes reflected both caution and curiosity, and Ethan spoke in a calm, steady voice, describing the long search, the journeys through wind and snow, the nights of silent hope, without ever mentioning disappointment or despair, allowing trust to form naturally. Ranger circled slowly, tail swaying, giving the boy the comfort of a companion who was both protector and guide, and the creek's frozen surface glinted as sunlight shifted, creating fleeting patterns of gold that danced on the snow. A gentle wind carried the faint aroma of pine, the distant sound of birds stirring despite the chill, and Ethan realized that this quiet moment, the shared stillness with Ranger and the boy, was as vital as the long journey itself. The boy's shivering eased as Ranger sat near, nose twitching, attentive and aware, providing a sense of security Ethan had longed to offer. He spoke softly about courage, the strength and persistence, and the quiet miracles that could emerge when one remained steadfast, letting the words hang in the cold air, absorbed by snow and stone alike. The forest seemed to exhale, the trees bending slightly under the gentle push of the wind, the distant peaks catching light in a way that suggested promise. Ethan felt the weight of years lift, replaced with the delicate tension of hope renewed, and Ranger nudged the boy lightly, a silent invitation to step forward, to trust, to become part of a story unfolding in the cold morning light where patience, loyalty, and kindness were the only tools required to bridge the distance between loss and reunion. The afternoon sun dipped lower behind the distant peaks, casting elongated shadows across the snow-laden forest floor as Ethan, Ranger, and the boy continued along the winding trail, their breaths forming clouds in the cold air. Each step revealed subtle shifts in the terrain, ice-glazed rocks catching the light, brittle branches bending under the weight of recent snowfall, and the soft gurgle of a partially frozen creek hidden beneath a veil of white. Ranger's ears twitched constantly, every muscle taut with anticipation, guiding Ethan with the quiet authority of a companion who had never faltered in loyalty. The boy, small and cautious, followed closely, eyes wide at the play of light and shadow, the way the forest seemed alive with secret murmurs and unseen movement. Ethan's mind traced the journey that had led them here, the years of searching across miles of wilderness, the nights spent under indifferent stars, and the quiet resolve that had propelled him forward despite the ache of uncertainty. They reached a bend where the trees parted slightly, revealing a cluster of wooden cabins long abandoned, their roofs weighed down with snow, icicles dangling like fragile ornaments from the eaves, the scent of aged wood and pine mingling in the crisp air. Ranger slowed, sniffing the perimeter with deliberate care, tail low and rhythmic, his amber eyes scanning for any anomaly, any hint that might indicate the presence of life or a hidden passage. Ethan crouched to examine footprints, the boy crouching beside him, their fingers brushing the cold snow, each print a message left in silence. A sudden glimmer near the edge of the main cabin caught Ethan's attention, sunlight reflecting off a fragment of metal half buried in the snow, and he rose slowly, signaling the boy to stay calm as Ranger padded ahead, nose lowered, alert and purposeful. The dog stopped at the base of the cabin, paws scratching lightly at the frozen ground, amber gaze flicking back to Ethan as if to confirm recognition. Ethan moved forward, brushing snow from the fragment to reveal an old, weathered locket, delicate and worn with time, the hinge still intact. He held it up, catching the light, a sense of quiet revelation washing over him, a tangible connection to the past and to the journey that had brought them here. Ranger circled, tail high, soft panting mingling with the gentle rush of wind through the pines, a rhythm that resonated with Ethan's own heartbeat. The boy leaned closer, eyes reflecting awe and wonder, fingers tracing the intricate patterns on the locket's surface, and Ethan spoke softly of patience, hope, and the invisible threads that connect acts of care to unforeseen miracles. A flock of birds stirred in the upper branches, their wings catching the golden light, and Ethan felt a deep resonance with the quiet world around him, the snow-absorbing sound, the forest exhaling with the subtle pulse of life. Ranger nudged Ethan gently, a reminder of the loyalty and guidance that had carried them this far, and together, the three moved deeper into the clearing, each step deliberate, measured, yet full of anticipation, the air thick with possibility, the echoes of a long quest blending with the soft whisper of wind, the distant murmur of the creek, and the subtle promise of discovery awaiting just beyond the next rise. The light began to shift as the afternoon wore on, golden rays stretching across the snow-covered forest and casting long, dancing shadows between the tall pines. Ethan's breath came in steady puffs, mingling with the cold air that carried the scent of pine needles, wet soil, and the faint aroma of melting ice. Ranger moved with fluid precision ahead of him, muscles tense yet graceful, ears flicking to catch every subtle sound, tail low but expressive, a silent guide through the labyrinth of trees and frost. The boy followed closely, small feet crunching on the icy path, wide eyes absorbing the textures, colors, and sounds of the forest, the sunlight catching on tiny icicles that hung from branches like delicate ornaments. Ethan paused near a cluster of rocks, brushing snow from the surfaces to reveal faint etchings that hinted at something long forgotten, a story written by time itself. Ranger sniffed carefully, amber. Eyes scanning, nose twitching, and then nudged Ethan gently toward a hidden opening beneath the largest boulder, a narrow crevice partially concealed by a curtain of icicles. Ethan crouched, feeling the weight of years, of miles traveled, of silent hopes that had carried him through so many lonely nights, and he reached carefully into the crevice, fingers brushing against rough stone that seemed almost alive, warm with the subtle pulse of the earth beneath. The boy leaned closer, his gaze fixed on the motion, a quiet understanding passing between the three of them, a sense of anticipation that had been building since the first footprints in the snow. A soft glimmer caught Ethan's eye, reflecting the late afternoon sun from a small metallic object tucked into the rock, worn by time but still intact, a symbol of continuity, of memory preserved. He lifted it, a key or locket perhaps, and held it in his gloved hands, watching how the sunlight danced across its surface, warming the cold space between them with a golden glow. Ranger circled the area, alert and poised, tail swishing gently, ears high, sensing nuances in the air that Ethan could barely perceive, guiding their steps with subtle nudges and soft movements. The boy reached out, hesitant at first, and then carefully traced the contours of the object, curiosity and reverence in his wide eyes, while Ethan spoke softly, his voice steady and calm, describing patience, trust, and the importance of following the quiet guidance of those who have walked faithfully by your side. The forest itself seemed to lean in, the snow muffling sound, the wind whispering through branches, carrying with it the faint, sweet scent of pine resin and the promise of discovery. Shadows stretched longer, but the light persisted, illuminating their path as if drawing attention to the subtle details, the markers that had been waiting, patiently, for someone to notice. Ranger gave a single soft bark, low and deliberate, as if confirming the truth of their findings, and Ethan felt a surge of quiet triumph, not just for the object discovered but for the journey itself, for the years of hope and perseverance, and for the silent companionship that had never wavered. Together, the three of them moved forward through the glade, each step measured, each movement full of meaning, carrying with it the sense that something extraordinary was unfolding, a story of loyalty, persistence, and the small, profound miracles that reveal themselves when hearts remain steadfast and open. The late afternoon light softened as Ethan, Ranger, and the boy advanced deeper into the heart of the forest, the snow crunching lightly beneath their boots, and the air carrying the subtle scent of pine, cold earth, and melting frost. Ranger led with an effortless grace, pausing occasionally to sniff the air and to adjust his path, amber eyes catching every shadow and glint of movement among the trees, while Ethan followed closely, careful not to disturb the delicate balance of sound and space. The boy's small hands brushed against the snow-laden branches as he walked, his breath forming clouds in the crisp air, his eyes wide with wonder at the interplay of light and shadow, at the soft sparkle of ice on every twig, at the muted shimmer of the forest floor beneath a thin veil of frost. A gentle breeze stirred, carrying with it the faint murmurs of the stream they had glimpsed earlier, the low whistle of wind through the pines, and the distant call of birds hidden among the higher branches, as if the forest itself were guiding them forward. Ranger paused at the edge of a small clearing, tail low but expressive, and nudged Ethan gently toward a sunken area partially covered by snow and ice, a depression that seemed unremarkable at first glance but hinted at a story waiting to be discovered. Ethan crouched carefully, brushing snow aside with gloved hands, revealing the weathered surface of what appeared to be a stone basin, rough to the touch, darkened by time, yet strangely warm against the cold. The boy leaned closer, curiosity and cautious excitement mixing on his face as he traced the edges with small gloved fingers, marveling at the texture, the subtle patterns, and the sense of history embedded in the stone. Ethan lifted a portion of ice and uncovered a small, intricately carved box, faintly glimmering in the filtered sunlight. Its hinges delicate but intact, as though preserved for this very moment. Ranger sniffed and circled the find, giving a soft, approving bark, ears high and alert, tail swishing in measured rhythm, signaling that they had indeed found something extraordinary. Ethan opened the box slowly, revealing its contents, a collection of notes, each carefully folded, some with faint drawings of landscapes and trees, others with short passages written in elegant handwriting, carrying messages of hope, patience, and the quiet courage of those who had walked the forest before them. The boy's eyes lit up as he lifted a note gently, reading the words aloud in a soft voice, and Ethan nodded, a warmth spreading through his chest as he realized the connection between past and present, the way kindness and care could ripple across time. The soft light glinted off Ranger's fur as the dog leaned against Ethan's leg, head tilted slightly, as if sensing the emotional weight of the discovery, the sacredness of the moment. A flock of birds took flight from the upper branches, their wings catching the light, scattering patterns of gold and white across the clearing, and Ethan breathed deeply, feeling the forest exhale with them, a sense of quiet triumph and fulfillment settling in. Each movement, each sound, each glimmer of light reinforced the lessons of patience, loyalty, and the subtle, profound miracles that patience and steadfastness can bring, and Ethan felt the tension of years of searching ease, replaced with the gentle assurance that their journey had brought them to a place where past, present, and the quiet magic of companionship converged. The golden light of late afternoon began to fade, casting long, soft shadows across the snow-blanketed forest as Ethan, Ranger, and the boy approached a gentle rise that overlooked a small valley nestled between the towering pines. The air was crisp and carried the faint scent of melting snow, pine sap, and the subtle sweetness of frost-touched earth. Ranger paused at the crest, amber eyes scanning the expanse below, tail swaying gently, ears high, sensing the nuances of wind and movement, guiding Ethan with quiet authority. Ethan knelt briefly to adjust the boy's scarf and gloves, ensuring warmth against the chill, feeling the small weight of his hand rest lightly on the boy's shoulder as a gesture of reassurance. The valley stretched before them, dotted with the faint outlines of distant cabins, smoke curling lazily from chimneys, and the glint of sunlight reflecting off a partially frozen creek that wound its way through the landscape like a silver ribbon. Each step forward was deliberate, the snow crunching softly beneath boots, mingling with the rhythmic sound of Ranger's paws and the quiet exhalations of the boy, forming a cadence that blended seamlessly with the natural harmony of the forest. Ethan's thoughts drifted to the years of searching, the relentless pursuit through harsh winters, the nights spent alone under indifferent stars, and the unwavering patience that had carried him through each day, tempered by the loyalty of Ranger and the quiet hope that had never dimmed. A faint movement near the edge of the creek caught Ranger's attention, and he padded forward, nose low, ears alert, tail gently swishing, signaling to Ethan that something awaited discovery. Ethan followed, careful and measured, feeling the subtle give of ice beneath his boots and the uneven rise of the ground beneath the snow, each motion synchronized with the dog's guidance. As they reached a cluster of smooth river stones partially exposed by melting ice, Ethan noticed the glint of something metallic tucked between them, a small, weathered key catching the last rays of sunlight. He knelt to retrieve it, brushing the ice and snow carefully, revealing intricate engravings along its edge, worn yet distinct, a tangible link to the story that had begun long before they arrived. Ranger circled, tail low and rhythmic, giving a soft bark of acknowledgement, while the boy leaned closer, eyes wide with awe, tracing the engravings gently with gloved fingers, feeling the weight and significance of the moment. Ethan spoke softly, his voice steady and calm, describing the importance of patience, loyalty, and the quiet miracles that unfold when one remains steadfast and attentive, allowing the forest to teach its lessons in subtle, profound ways. The wind shifted slightly, carrying the distant murmur of the creek and the soft rustle of pine needles, the golden light of the setting sun glinting off the metallic key and illuminating the boy's face with a warm, ethereal glow. Ranger nudged Ethan gently, as if to remind him that the journey and its discoveries were not merely about finding objects, but about understanding the enduring bonds forged through trust, resilience, and quiet courage. Together, the three continued down the gentle slope, every step a measured act of exploration and connection, hearts aligned with the subtle pulse of the forest, aware that each discovery, each moment of revelation, was part of a larger story of perseverance, kindness, and the transformative power of companionship. The sun dipped lower behind the distant ridges, casting long streaks of gold and amber across the snow-draped valley as Ethan, Ranger, and the boy arrived at the edge of a hidden meadow, the frozen grasses sparkling like scattered crystals. Ranger's ears pricked as he stepped lightly, paws crunching softly over the thin layer of snow, and he paused frequently, nose to the ground, tail swaying, guiding Ethan towards subtle hints in the terrain that might have gone unnoticed by any other eyes. Ethan's gloved hand brushed against the rough bark of a leaning pine as he followed, feeling the intricate grooves under his fingertips, each one a testament to the forest's endurance and patience, and he breathed in deeply the mingled scents of pine resin, cold earth, and the faint aroma of thawing snow. The boy followed closely, small and careful, eyes wide as he observed the delicate frost clinging to each twig, the way sunlight scattered across the icy surface of the brook that trickled through the meadow, and the gentle hush that settled over the landscape, as though the forest itself held its breath. A soft glimmer in the snow caught Ethan's attention, partially obscured by the frost, and he knelt to brush it away, revealing a small, weathered journal, its cover worn smooth by time yet still intact, the pages inside faintly yellowed but holding words and sketches that conveyed the thoughts of someone who had walked this land long before them. Ranger gave a single, measured bark, tail lifting slightly, signaling Ethan to observe closely, and the boy reached forward, fingers tracing the edges of the journal with careful reverence, a quiet awe reflected in his eyes. Ethan opened the first page and read the carefully written lines, describing the cycles of seasons, the subtle lessons of patience, the small acts of kindness and observation that could alter the course of one's life in ways both tangible and unseen, and he felt a swell of connection between past and present, the continuity of hope and guidance that had been preserved within these pages. The wind shifted, carrying with it the soft rustle of dried grasses and the distant murmur of the creek, mingling with the subtle creak of branches settling under the fading light, and Ethan spoke softly to the boy, explaining the importance of attentiveness, compassion, and the quiet courage that had guided them to this moment. Ranger nudged Ethan gently, encouraging him to look up and take in the full sweep of the meadow, the golden glow of the sunset casting warmth against the cool air, highlighting the distant ridges and the gentle curves of the valley, the interplay of light and shadow shaping the landscape like a living painting. The boy inhaled deeply, feeling the crisp air fill his lungs, and he turned to Ethan with a look of understanding and trust, a silent acknowledgement of the journey they had shared. Ethan knelt beside him, placing a hand on his shoulder, feeling the steady pulse of life beneath the fur of Ranger, the loyalty and presence that had never wavered, and together they watched as the sun dipped further, painting the snow with deep orange and pink hues, a quiet reminder of perseverance, connection, and the gentle miracles that reveal themselves when hearts remain open and patient, carrying the weight of hope, the warmth of companionship, and the promise of discovery yet to come. The first hints of twilight began to weave through the tall pines, painting the snow in muted shades of lavender and silver as Ethan, Ranger, and the boy reached the edge of a secluded glen. Ranger paused, nose lowered and tail moving with a measured rhythm, sensing the subtle shift in the air, the faint scent of earth warmed beneath the snow and the delicate trace of smoke curling from a distant chimney, hinting at life just beyond the forest's embrace. Ethan's gloved hand rested briefly on the boy's shoulder, steadying him, feeling the rapid pulse of anticipation that mirrored his own, and he glanced down at the path ahead where the snow had been compressed and marked with faint tracks, a sign that they were close to a place where patience and persistence might be rewarded. The boy followed quietly, eyes wide with wonder, observing the delicate interplay of shadow and light, the way icicles caught the dying sun, casting fleeting rainbows across the white blanket of snow, and the soft murmur of the brook as it wound through the glen added a gentle, rhythmic cadence to the otherwise hushed forest. Ethan knelt to examine the tracks, noticing subtle impressions indicating that someone, or something, had been here recently, and Ranger barked softly, a single, deliberate sound, tail swaying, signaling that they were approaching something significant. As they moved closer, the glen opened into a small clearing where a modest cabin, partially concealed by tall evergreens and coated with a thin layer of frost, stood like a silent sentinel, its windows reflecting the cool light, and a thin wisp of smoke rose from the chimney, curling lazily into the crisp air. Ranger padded forward cautiously, sniffing the ground and brushing past the snow-laden branches, guiding Ethan to the weathered door where the subtle warmth emanated through the cold air, a promise of comfort and welcome. Ethan reached out, hand steady, brushing the frost from the doorframe, feeling the solid wood beneath his fingers, rough yet reassuring, a tangible anchor in the quiet anticipation that had followed them through the day. The boy peered around, eyes reflecting both the wonder of the forest and the quiet promise held within the cabin, his breath misting in the cold, mingling with the scent of pine and wood smoke, creating a sensory tapestry that wrapped around them. Ethan pushed the door open slowly, the hinges creaking softly in the still air, and the cabin revealed a warm interior, sunlight dimly filtering through frosted windows onto the wooden floorboards, a small hearth glowing faintly with embers that exhaled gentle warmth into the space. Ranger entered first, nose lifted, ears alert, tail sweeping, and the boy followed, hesitant but filled with curiosity, while Ethan surveyed the room, taking in the details, the subtle arrangement of furniture, the quiet presence of life lived simply and attentively, and the sense of history embedded in each surface. A collection of notes and small objects rested neatly on a side table, their purpose and placement conveying care, thought, and a continuity of kindness, and Ethan felt the deep resonance of his journey, the countless hours of searching, the loyalty and guidance of Ranger, and the quiet, profound realization that they had arrived at a place where patience, faith, and persistence were met with reward. The forest outside began to darken, shadows stretching further across the snow, but inside the cabin, the warmth and the soft glow of embers wrapped around them like a gentle embrace, a sanctuary found after a long journey, a moment suspended in time where trust, perseverance, and the unspoken bond between man and dog culminated in quiet, extraordinary fulfillment. The final rays of the sun faded, leaving the cabin bathed in the soft luminescence of twilight, and Ethan stood by the hearth, Ranger at his side, both gazing out the window at the forest stretched in shades of deep blue and silver under the emerging stars. The boy sat quietly on a small wooden stool, holding the weathered journal, flipping through the pages with reverent care, eyes reflecting the glow from the fading embers as he traced the intricate sketches and carefully penned words that told of resilience, kindness, and the quiet courage of those who had walked the land before them. Ranger lifted his head, ears flicking toward a gentle rustle at the edge of the clearing beyond the cabin, amber eyes bright and focused, and Ethan smiled softly, placing a steady hand on the dog's back, feeling the familiar warmth and the unbroken bond that had carried them through months of searching and waiting. The forest exhaled softly, the whisper of wind through tall pines mingling with the faint murmur of the brook beyond, creating a symphony of quiet sounds that seemed to acknowledge the culmination of their journey, the unspoken patience and devotion that had led them to this sanctuary. Ethan opened the small locket they had found earlier, revealing a photograph of a man and a dog, worn yet full of life, and he felt a swell of understanding, the sense that moments of courage and loyalty echoed across time, linking those who had come before to the present in a chain of quiet miracles. The boy leaned closer, tracing the image with small fingers, and Ethan spoke softly of the value of patience, of enduring hope, of listening to those who guide silently, whether human or animal, and the boy nodded, absorbing the lesson in the hush of the cabin. Outside, the first stars appeared, glimmering through the branches dusted with snow, and the golden glow of the embers reflected off the icy edges of the windows, creating patterns of light that danced across the wooden floor. Ranger moved to the boy's side, laying his head gently against the small legs, tail sweeping slowly, and the boy reached out to stroke the dog, a quiet gesture of connection and trust that radiated through the room. Ethan took a deep breath, the scent of pine, wood smoke, and melting snow blending into a comforting calm, and he felt the weight of long journeys, of years of searching, of nights spent under indifferent skies, lift gradually, replaced by a profound sense of belonging and fulfillment. The cabin seemed to embrace them, walls and hearth and light resonating with the quiet magic of discovery, the patient unfolding of moments that reward perseverance, loyalty, and care. Outside,